Dysfunctional core belief number one, I think that we have, and that will, and this core belief is going to stand in the way of criminal justice reform, is we think punishment is the solution. Right? It's in us. Listen to the kind of vocabulary that we talk about. Or if you want to see it manifest mostly, talk about letting someone who did a crime, let's say someone distributed drugs, and we want to offer good time or maybe an early release. Where does the discussion automatically go? Where's the conflict in the discussion? On this group participation. Where's the conflict? We shouldn't let drug dealers out that soon. We shouldn't let insert your crime. Right? And so we don't think the argument is always around the debate dosage. How much time or how much punishment did we actually deliver for the crime? Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't punish bad behavior. I'm just saying I've read a lot of white papers and a lot of evidence-based papers, and I've never seen one show me that our grid, the time done for the action for the crime convicted of, actually leads to a true decrease or a change of behavior in the individual. Right? And so dysfunctional core belief number one is we say, you did a crime. Therefore, this is going to happen to you. And what we don't pay attention to, it's an afterthought, is how is it that we're actually going to correct the behavior of that individual so that they won't thieve, steal, be violent, whatever. It's all a matter of dosage of punishment. Right? And so the outcomes are missing from our thought. We think punishment, or we the taxpayers actually want punishment to do four things. We want it to deter crime. We want this retribution. You may not think of that, but here's the phrase we use. They paid their debt to society. I was a victim of crime a year and a half ago. I probably have close to a week of my life in trying to recover from identity theft. Put credit cards, stealing them out of my mailbox. They'd apply for them, come get them before I got the mail. And they charged that stuff. It was a pain. In fact, I had to reach out to your office, Congressman, for some help on some of it. If that individual did 4 years, I'm not happy with the retribution, nor I didn't get justice. Right? All you did was actually sign me up to pay some more taxes for an individual that stole from me and from a bunch of credit card companies. Right? So, incarceration and the punishment actually doesn't solve the retribution in the way that we want it to. Rehabilitation, not often. There are two individuals here from the state of Arkansas that I think are leading the way in corrections in Arkansas. And they run some units that are treatment centers. And they've got a measurable 20 to 25% impact, decrease in recidivism rates, and they stay shorter amounts of times. Folks that go there stay shorter, and you get better outcomes. I'd say that's great money spent. Right? And that's Kevin and Carrie. I don't know that they want me to mention their names, but they're with the Arkansas Community Corrections. They are thought leaders in the state for rehabilitation in corrections. The thing that I think our punishment does well, and we're doing very well now, is we incapacitate. And I would say that incapacitation is right and good in certain cases. If we are afraid of an individual, we should incapacitate them. Speaking as a father of 5. My kids are all over the street. Right? I don't want them hurt. I don't want you hurt. I don't want your children and grandchildren hurt. We want safe streets, as the sheriff said. So incapacitate, there's a role for it. We're just using it for incapacitation, I think, more broadly than we should. And the outcomes are bad because we think that punishment is, we've got a dysfunctional core belief. But punishment is almost a moral obligation that we have. And so as the doctor told us in the parenting class, right, she said, hey, if they're acting up and you go to spank them in the moment, you need to grow up. Because you're not actually changing their behavior, and you're their parent. You're there to raise them to make good decisions and live on their own. What you did in the spanking was just work out some of your own frustration. I think that's what we do with a lot of criminal justice. This is the talk that we have. We're working out our own frustration. I'm scared, I don't know what to do, and therefore we need to get tough. Number two, dysfunctional core belief. We think that if you did the crime and we're going to give you time, 4 years, 11 months on average in ABC, then that's it, right? Justice served, and we move on to the next one. But what we do is we ignore the cascading consequences. And I'm going to show you a few slides to kind of prove my point here. And those cascading consequences are on our economy and our families. Let me run you through some context here. This is Arkansas. From about 13 to 16 in Arkansas, we had the fastest growing prison population in the nation. It was a direct result of us getting tough on crime. There was a man named Darrell Dennis who was a parolee. He got out, he murdered, I think he ran a carjacking, murdered a young man. Right? There was public outrage, as there should be. Right? He did wrong. But what happened was we started exercising the letter of the law. Public was outraged, they won't crime, so here's what happened. Our prison grew, and here's what happened to your checkbook. Right? This is how we had to pay for it. And so we started reallocating state budget to corrections rather than roads, education, future opportunities. And so here's what happened to the budget. Now, remember the cascading consequences? Wasn't just checkbook. But this is a graph of foster care. This is a child welfare graph. Look at the purple line. Purple line is number of children in foster care. What years did it start going up? Does it look like that graph? Cascading consequences. We started putting children into foster care. And why is that important? Well, one, through no fault of their own, children were removed from their family, often their schools. There's only about 50% of the children that we pull in foster care are able to stay in their own community. We have to move them somewhere else to find help. Right? So any support or friends that they had at school, that's gone too. So it's tragic. In fact, we removed so many during that time period, Arkansas became number one according to a study done by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. We had number one in 2016 for number of children who had had an incarcerated parent. Now, why is that important? It's because we've become aware of some deep and great study on something called adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. And this graph is busy, but I'm going to explain it to you if you'll stick with me. And so ACEs is a test that you can give, adverse childhood experiences. It's 10 questions. And it asks, before you were 18, did these things occur in your home? Were you physically abused? Were you sexually abused? Number 10 on the test is, did you have a parent incarcerated? Okay, so we were number one in 2016 when the Annie E. Casey study did their study. Annie E. Casey Foundation did their study. Number one, 16%. That's more than double the national average. 7% average on the ACE test. We were number one, and so all those kids got one. And so I'm going to read to you some of the impacts of high ACE test. The more ACEs you have, the greater the risk for chronic disease, mental illness, violence, and being a victim of violence. There's a great study on this. You can think of an ACE score as a cholesterol score for childhood trauma. For example, people who have an ACE score of 4 are twice as likely to be smokers, 7 times more likely to be an alcoholic. Having an ACE score of 4 increases the risk of emphysema or chronic bronchitis by nearly 400%. And attempted suicide by 1,200%. People with high ACEs are more likely to be violent, to have more marriages, more broken bones, more drug prescriptions, more depression, and more autoimmune diseases. People with an ACE score of 6 or higher are at risk of their lifespan being cut by 20 years. And so the cascading consequences of mass incarceration or doling out punishment or getting tougher and tougher on punishment are that it impacts our families. And so we're scared or we're mad, and both of those things we have a right to and are appropriate. But what we've chosen to do about it is having consequences that are far beyond what we want and what we can now afford to pay for, both in direct incarceration and the impact on kids and the cycle that's generated here. So what? I think an appropriate set of core beliefs in response to punishment and ignoring cascading consequences are one, what do we want for those people that we are not scared of? I'd say that this would be of the people that we're scared of also. But what do we want? We want restoration. I'm a victim of identity theft, as I saw. I saw the two guys too. And in the moment, I thought that's a capital offense, which is a good thing I won't be on the jury, right, if they ever catch me. But what I actually want for these two guys that stole from me is I want them to go get a job. I want them to take care of their families. I want them to pay me back in some way. They owe me time and they owe the credit card companies money. Right? I want them to address me as a victim. And I also, and the way we're going to do it with these two guys, because I've been in the business for a little while, I'm generalizing, but I looked at them and I saw what they did, is we need to deal with their causal issues, right? And incarcerating them for 4 years and 11 months, both of them, right? And signing the taxpayer of Arkansas up for $200,000 plus a 56% recidivism likelihood rate on these guys, so they'll do life on installment, is not the right approach, I think. We need to find out what the issue is, and we need to address it, and they need to be held accountable for what they did, but the ultimate goal should be restoration. And number two is, all along the way, we need to incent good behavior. If there's behavior that we want, working a job, taking care of your family, being involved in pro-social things, we should incent that. And so if someone commits a crime, if they're a felon, even if they do time, 4 years and 11 months, we should always incent them for the things that we want them to do, instead of the continued punishment. Right? It's hard enough before they went in. Now when they're coming back out to us, we need to incent and reward and talk to them like they can actually go get a job. They can start a career. Education's a big one. In 1994, we made a big mistake in removing Pell Grant eligibility for folks that are incarcerated. It's a huge mistake. Educational achievement always reduces crime, every time. How many master's degree folks do you see running around slinging rock on the corner? It just doesn't happen that often. You might be able to find me an excuse or an exception. So we need to incent good behaviors. Folks need to be involved in their families, and they need to go to work, and they need to be able to work in careers where they can find purpose and meaning, pay taxes, buy groceries, and sit next to you at the PTA meeting. So those are my thoughts, and thank you for listening to them.